All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast. The aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. It is Thursday afternoon, so you know what that means. Favorite college basketball writer is here. All right, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I have requested a trade from the Brooklyn Substacks to the Dallas Substacks. So we're going to see if it gets honored in time for the Substack trade deadline.
A lot going on today in the trade deadline, and I just
really fun to wake up at 6 to a text of this league from my best friend, and then having to hurry to ESPN app and figure out what happened.
Are you a Grizzlies guy?
No, I don't really have a team. I guess the Pistons are my closest team, but they're so hard to watch that I can't get into it. But it is fun to bandwagon on Memphis.
Okay. League Bay, Detroit Pistons legends, now a Hawk, so we have some crossover there, Will.
Memphis Grizzlies legend James Wiseman, Memphis Tigers legend James Wiseman, now a Detroit Piston.
Yeah, I was one I definitely did not understand for Detroit's aspect, because like Wiseman and just drafted Jalen Duren, another Memphis guy.
Yeah, so you have two Memphis centers, and you figure out which one sucks less.
I guess, Matt.
The answer is Duren, by the way, easily.
Yeah, then why make? Man, that had to hurt. Kind of return if you're the Warriors. Look above ball and several other good players. That was that was a rough one to swallow. That James Wiseman was never going to happen.
Yeah, but.
Well, don't forget, folks, college basketball on this very program each and every Friday as you're listening. You can find Will on Twitter at StatsByWill. Go subscribe to his Substack, where he's writing all kinds of great college basketball content over on statsbywill.substack.com. Type in your email. That's simple. Go ahead and do that today. There was a really good update and thoughtful. Something that Will and I have a lot in common, but that's definitely something that when you're a married guy, you're nearing your 30s, work-life balance out, all those things are things that you have to consider and take care of your mental health, take care of your personal and physical health. It's just it's very respectable, and I think it's very important that we all nobody cares, work harder culture, that we actually take some time to take care of ourselves, because that's the most important thing, and we need it to do it for ourselves and also the people closest to us, because they see it when we're burned out, and you want to be at your best for them too. So great article that you can go check out over there on statsbywill.substack.com. You can email us if you have any college basketball questions for Will or myself on these shows. You can email us at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. Podcast, Spotify. We're available each and every day. New content on this feed, covering everything. And last thing, go check us out on YouTube, youtube.com. You can watch full episodes, clips, YouTube, all that good stuff over on our YouTube page. So we continue youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast here on the Blue Wire Pod Network. Well, I want to start here. It's been a couple days since it happened, but following a name redacted victory over name redacted on Saturday afternoon, Indiana played Purdue and hosted Purdue, and then beat Purdue late. It was kind of an under the radar loss for Purdue, I think. An amazing atmosphere for IU. It's cool when IU's better at basketball, because it doesn't matter how many years they've been irrelevant on the national stage. The fan Assembly Hall is still a top-notch venue, and it was really cool to see. And obviously a big win for Mike Woodson and his. I want to ask you, like, how did Indiana beat Purdue, and did they establish some sort of blueprint that other teams could utilize come tournament time to beat the Boilermakers?
So it was interesting, and I think I want to start this off with a shout out to my favorite web form out there, Meet at Midfield. It's a college football with some college basketball site, but they had a post up, I think after Indiana lost to Penn State, titled "Indiana Basketball is in Hell," And since then, Indiana's 7-1. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it just gets bumped like after every win. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
really enjoying that lately. But no, I thought Indiana did a terrific job of forcing some lower quality shots by Purdue. Edie in particular had to take 10 hook shots,
Mm.
which is not like that's a bad shot for him, right? He still hits those 51% of the time, but that's 12% less often than layups for him, and obviously a lot less often than dunks. They did a really good job of forcing him to take shots from 4 to 6 feet, maybe 6 to 8 feet, versus right there at the rim. And I think against him, every inch counts, quite literally. Like you have to do everything you can to shove him away, get him out, keep him from just overpowering you en route to a massive dunk. And it's a little easier said than done, I think. Like it's not every team is going to have Trace Jackson Davis on their side or, like some other front court options they had. But the blueprint aspect is interesting because I think there's a couple different ways you can beat them. But Indiana flashed an interesting one in that they really didn't double Edie very often. It was just a few times all game. They said, okay, if you want to take 25 shots, take 25 shots. We'll let you score, 1 to 2 points at a time if you have to, but we're going to make it hard on you. And we don't believe the shooters around you can beat us. So, and I mean, that formula worked. Purdue only went 6 for 19 from deep. And I've kind of altered between what way is the best to do it, whether it's single coverage and just say, like, we're going to accept that, but we're going to keep everybody else from doing their thing. Or if it's you double Edie, you accept that you're going to play 3-on-4, but you don't believe that Purdue's shooters are capable of beating you. And I've wondered about that because, I mean, like Purdue really isn't like an amazing shooting team. They're right at the national average from 3, both in attempts and makes. They pass the ball very well, but they really don't have like that knockdown every single time, like you're terrified when he pulls up shooter. I mean, like Braden Smith and Mason Gillis are both very good shooters, but they're not elite ones. And Fletcher Loyer has really cooled off after a hot start. And so you wonder if the way they go out, there's 2 ways I can really picture them going out. Is one, Edie picks up an insane 5th foul in an offensive rebound attempt, and Twitter is just bonkers for weeks after. Or 2, Purdue shoots 3 of 17 from deep, and they can't support Edie. And, the problem with the NCAA tournament is, like, it's a loser machine by nature. Like, you're a lot less likely to not win it than you are. But I don't know. How do you feel about those 2 strategies? Because you can make a good argument for either one. And the 2 games they've lost, it's kind of been different strategies in each. Like Rutgers doubled Edie quite a bit more than Indiana did.
Yeah, I guess it's so hard to say because I think it depends on your personnel, right? Like everybody's personnel will, like some people, it makes more sense than others. Like some people, I don't know. I think Tennessee wouldn't have to. Like if Tennessee got matched up with Purdue in the Elite Eight, I don't think they would have to send 2 to help. You just throw Euros to piss them off, and then I do for a little bit, and then Toby Awaka, who might win a lot of those matchups, just based on how he's played and rebounded of late. But I don't know. I guess it's just matchup based, like so many different things. But I don't think there's a wrong answer there.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds the rest of the way for Purdue. Like, I don't think there's a secret formula to beat them by any means. I do think like the fact they've shored up their defense quite a bit is going to help them come March. And I mean, really, they're like, I think all they really got to do is go like 4-3 even down the stretch to lock up a 1 seed, because it's not like the top end of college basketball is very good this year. So
who are your locks? Are there any locks for you?
There's no locks for a 1 seed. Purdue probably is the closest. They've got the best resume, and I think that's why they stayed number 1 in the AP this week. So I think they're going to be closest. They'll probably finish, 27, 28 wins, and they're going to have the inside lane on the overall 1 seed. But again, it's I don't know. I mean, beyond Purdue, I think your next best shot's probably Houston, Alabama. And then I keep reminding myself that legally they are required to have 4 1 seeds in this tournament. And so it will be somebody who we're still doing research to find out. I am not unconvinced it won't be Arizona, though.
That's interesting. We'll see. It's just weird. It's just a weird year of college basketball because there are
Very.
truly no elite, just juggernauts in the sport right now.
No.
And
And when the best team to me is Houston,
yeah,
and it's like we like Houston, we think they're very good, but I mean, Houston lost at home to a bad Temple team. Really could have lost to Wichita, could have lost to Cincy, could have lost to UCF, to USF.
hmm
Their run of play of late, really since Christmas, has not been the most encouraging thing in the world.
no, I think it's gonna be a really weird Final Four. I think that's where we're headed towards.
That's why this isn't going to make any Tennessee fan happy because they love being in the torture chamber. But that's why this could be the year because nothing makes sense. So why wouldn't the least sensical thing, which is Tennessee doing it, happen?
Yeah, I mean, West Virginia like finding their way into the Final Four would be hilarious. But
I would love that because then it's Bob Huggins. Honestly, it sounds like Bob Huggins might retire, which will be sad when it happens.
yeah,
But if that is the case, that'd be cool to see him go out with one big one to end it. But no, I mean like we are really going to head towards a Final Four. Where it's like you might get a 1 seed in there, but you might also get like 9 seed Nevada for some reason.
it's gonna be weird, no matter what.
Yes.
But it's hey, we're almost there. It's kind of wild that I was like, oh, we still got some time, but no, we're nearing the end. We're in the meat, like the back half here. But
Yeah.
conference play and conference tournament season will be here in just a couple weeks, and then it's March Madness. Like it's we're nearing the end here, and it's funny because we still just don't have a good feel for who's actually good and who's not. Which
Yeah.
hey, it's different. Like you don't want it to be like Baylor and Gonzaga every year. The sport would be pretty boring if that was the case.
And the fun of all of that, like when this podcast comes out, there are 30 days until Selection Sunday. So we really are on the home stretch. Under a month.
That's wild. Wake Forest, are they a tournament team for you now?
Maybe. The thing that's actually going to harm them, and I guess we'll see how much it harms them, is that the ACC sucks big time. Very stinky conference with no serious teams in it. But that being said, the bubble this year is the bubble as usual. It's not very good. I don't think anybody's shocked by that. One of my favorite things is when announcers are like, the bubble team is really going to have their back against the wall for this one. They're going to come out and play hard. It's like, well, they're a bubble team for a reason, brother. Anyway, I'm feeling frustrated with some people. Anyway, I think they're going to have a real shot because they've got some good wins mixed in. Like they just beat UNC. They really could have beaten UNC by way more than they did. I think they led by 26, 27 at one point. Only won by 7, but a win is a win no matter what. Got a home win over Duke, home win over Virginia Tech, road win over Wisconsin, which is going to really come into play as they're both bubble teams. But I would argue they need one more really good win to state their case. And they're going to have 2 opportunities coming up here in about a week and a half. Road Miami, because we all think, Miami's probably like, what, a 6, 7 seed somewhere in there?
Yeah. I mean, if they keep it up, though, they might move up. They have a possibility of moving up. I think Miami is because if, like you said, the ACC's bad, and like you could see if they were the one to take over. You can just
pile up wins.
Yeah.
So road Miami, and then February 22nd, road NC State. If you can win one of those and hold serve in the rest, and really the rest are not like much. It's Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, BC, Syracuse. If you go 5-1, I think you're on the good side of the bubble, which would be, I mean. And at that point, God forbid for old Steve Forbes, all you got to do is not lose to like a 13 seed in the ACC tournament again.
He seems like a likable dude. I hope.
He's a
and
good
they play
person.
a fun brand of basketball, the Deeks.
Yeah.
They're
for
also,
sure.
Yeah. There you go. Speaking of North Carolina, a lot of North Carolina basketball folks on this edition of the program because there's a lot happening. It's funny, Will, where so I was close, I think, being born in Wilmington, North Carolina. My dad was stationed over there. And my mom worked in an office. I remember she told me, like, North Carolina college basketball is just, it's so different than anywhere else in the country, where she was just always amazed at how much they loved, whether it was UNC, Duke, even UNC Wilmington, the Seahawks, like just Raleigh and the Wolfpack, and like how much they cared and how big of a conversation that was just decades ago. But it's a different thing entirely. My mom just was always amazed by the obsession with college basketball in the state of North Carolina, and where she was in Wilmington. But that is neither here nor there. Just a little Debbie Thomas anecdote here for you, Will, and for the good folks. All that being said, NC State is now a top 25 team, and I think we deserve whatever bump NC State gets, their head coach gets for making the top 25 and sticking around longer. I think us putting the pressure as a, hey, hot seat to watch candidate coming into the year. I'm not saying that we're fully responsible for the Wolfpack turnaround, but I'm also not saying that, Will.
You got to take the good with the bad, because there are 3 coaches that I'm specifically recalling being on hot seats that I went on record as slandering. Kevin Keats, who has really done a great job this year. Jared Haas at Stanford, who is getting fired. And Bobby Hurley, who's still not good. Anyway, NC State, I think this is a good and fun team, and it's a really good story. In the mess that is the ACC, you could make a legitimate argument. I don't know if I would be fully behind it, but you can make the case that they are the second best team, because I think Virginia's clearly out in front. I think that's an easy case to make. Miami probably is the real number 2, but I don't know that you could comfortably say Duke or UNC are better. I don't think you could comfortably say Pitt or Clemson are better. And so, I mean, they've taken advantage of this. They really don't turn the ball over at all. Terquavion Smith, really fun player to watch. DJ Burns, I feel like this is his 5th college, even though I know it's his 3rd. But that guy, whenever he's got the stamina to go up, he is quite the fun player to watch. And the underrated get they got, though, was Jarkel Joyner from Ole Miss, because he never leaves the court. He's playing 88% of possible minutes. Very efficient scorer from 2 and from 3. Very good at getting to the foul line. Never turns the ball over. It's nice to see him succeed, because, I think when we talked about them at the time, we said, based on his history at UNC Wilmington, there wasn't anything obvious that would say this wasn't going to work. And so maybe it's just one of those where it took the right mix, it took the right amount of time, and they have gotten lucky in some close games, but even so, 19-6 is 19-6. And it would take a real shocking collapse, and I don't want to speak it into existence by any means, for them to end up missing the tournament, I think.
Yeah, I think they're in, and I wonder, it would be wild. I don't know who had before the season. Is Clemson out? Is there any way Clemson still makes the tournament or no?
Clemson can get in. Again, fortunate that they have racked up the number of wins they have, but I would not put them on the right side of the bubble as of now. That Boston College loss is just so bad to have on your record, and South Carolina too. But to me, like, okay, that's early season. You didn't know South Carolina was going to be South Carolina. Losing to this Boston College is so. I would say you're kind of looking at a deal where if Clemson can at least finish 4-3, they're going to be within range of making it. And as long as NC State goes 3-3 or better to finish the season, they should be on the right side of the bubble. And I really think they're going to go like 4-2 or 5-1, because again, weak ACC, the only game that I think they're going to be a dog in is at Duke to end the season. I mean, aside from that, it's a good team, good players on it. They're going to be a frisky little 8 seed you got to deal with, 8 or a 9.
Who had before the year Clemson, NC State, and Wake making the NCAA tournament potentially?
Clemson, NC State, and Wake all getting in, while UNC might not.
Well, speaking of that, are they headed to the NIT? They lose to Wake this week. Obviously, it seems like a lot of folks are enjoying. It's hard to get a read on how folks outside of Chapel Hill feel about Hubert Davis, because he said I think he said something where he was complaining about foul calls and the foul disparity for, I think it was the Duke UNC game on Saturday night. Because I think Duke shot a lot more free throws, and a lot of folks were like, yes, this is what we've been complaining about playing UNC for like the last year and a half, is the discrepancy in UNC shooting a lot more free throws. And basically what he said is like, we are accustomed to shooting a lot more free throws than our opponent. In this game, it didn't. So clearly there must be something off. And folks were like, yeah, that's like, it's the, does he know? The like meme on Twitter. And like, that's what we were all thinking about. And I don't know, like, it kind of speaks to, it's just so weird, because if it was another university, if it like, because it's UNC, the blip year last year is so strange. Like, they're just, everything about this year and last year and that run, it felt so Cinderella. And then it's like, they just, oh, it's a comeback down to earth season for that Cinderella story last year. And you're like, well, not really. A bunch of folks came back and they thought they were going to run it back and make another deep run. Baycott's back, Love's back, and like, they should be actually better than a year ago, and a preseason top 5 team. And they're not looking at not even making the tournament. It's one of the weirder year and a half stretches of any college basketball team I remember in a long time. Will.
Yeah, I mean, like, you typically don't see teams that have a high amount of minutes continuity and were like reasonably, I mean, like, I think UNC finished like top 20 in Ken Pom. They were not like, the second best team in America by any means.
Yeah.
But like, generally, whenever a team that's, we'll say 30-ish was probably their true ranking. When they return as many minutes as UNC did, you would expect like, okay, was preseason number 1 kind of ridiculous? Yeah, but should they be top 10, top 15? Yeah, probably. And, like you said, it's really hard to recall a similar example of a team bringing back as much as they have and just flopping. So the last preseason top 5 team to miss it was the Nerlens Kentucky team. But I don't feel like that's a good comparison at all, because Kentucky was pretty young. It's kind of, and it's not going to end up this extreme because that LSU team is worse, but the big baby LSU team the year after they made the Final Four, when pretty much everybody came back for the most part. And they just straight up sucked. I mean, they were awful. Yeah. And so I don't know, man. It's really hard to recall a true 1-to-1, because seeing the way they've played and how everything has gone has been pretty shocking. And I still, maybe this is like a refusal to give up. I still think they're going to get in. They can confirm that they're going to get in if they win 5 of their final 7. And I mean, they have to beat Duke in the season finale at home. That is a non-negotiable must-win game. So that's going to be kind of the tell. If they can get to 20 regular season wins, I think they'll be fine. But if they go 4-3 and don't do anything like amazing in the ACC tournament, that's a first for a team. And so you don't miss the tournament, but you go from preseason AP number 1 to having to battle like, I don't know, Oklahoma State for the right to play San Diego State in the next round. That's not exactly what you were thinking when you started the season on November 7th.
No. It's a very conflicting year if you're John Grisham, right?
Explain.
This is going to get super meta. As a John Grisham stan, Will.
I haven't read one of his books in a long time. I do know who the author is, and I remember reading Runaway Jury in middle school.
It's a very good one. Camino Island I just read a few months back. It was fantastic. Book Thief, set in Jacksonville, Florida. It's pretty great. Okay. He's just... I was actually talking to John Taylor Fangraphs about this last night. I think that's why it came back up in my mind just now. But like, he writes in such a way that you just breeze through it. But I was always embarrassed that I loved Grisham, because it was one of those, oh, really? Grisham's one of your favorites? There's some that, like, and the nerdy folks have just, oh, Stephen King is one of your favorites? Really? Way to branch out a little bit. Like, Stephen King, pretty good at his job. You like his work. You heard about this? You see this? And Grisham, though, because I'm a Grisham guy and just love reading his stuff, and you can fly through it. He's just a great writer. Short, concise sentences, very engaging, great dialogue. Love Grisham. So big, and just seems like a really good, genuine dude. And he's a North Carolina, like, I know he's a huge college basketball fan. Like, that's his jam. And you could see him on courtside. Like, just, Will, if you like Google John Grisham courtside, I think you'll see him a lot for Virginia and North Carolina games. So it's got to be a complicated year for him because he's, I think, a local Virginian, and Virginia obviously the best team in the ACC this year. But his Tar Heels now falling off a cliff. So for the Tar Heels to fall, Virginia had to rise, and I wonder what it's like in the Grisham household right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm looking at this now. Okay, so his son played at Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, good for him. And the Firm. How could I forget the Firm?
Well, I mean, he has a lot of books, man. The man is
he does have like
talk
30,
about a content
right?
machine. John Grisham is a content machine.
The book nerds who tell you can't like John Grisham or Stephen King, they gotta get all that dip off their chip. Have you ever, I don't know, do you know the site Rate Your Music?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen the video of the guy? It's just titled "Guy Who Bases All of His Opinions on Rate Your Music"?
No, but I know exactly where you're going with this.
That's the feeling I get when I see reviews on Goodreads.
And
it's just like, this book sucked because it wasn't as good as 1944. And it's like, okay, man, that's fine. I liked it. Mm-hmm. Can you let me like it?
Gatekeeping book reading is a weird thing to be about because, hey, like if you look at the numbers, I remember we're really getting the weeds here with book talk, but I think
I can't wait for somebody to also be like, oh, I know what Rate Your Music is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's going to be fun.
Do you ever use Last FM? I was a Last FM guy back in the day.
I still use it. It's fun to go and compare that to Spotify Wrapped because I've noticed Spotify's do not measure the same dates.
I was such a dork because that was a big thing when I was in college, and I was so protective of my top. I think it was like my top 6 and like what my most known musical choices were because I was like, hey, if I'm listening too much of something that's a little embarrassing, I have to go off it for a little bit because it's getting tracked into my Last FM, and I don't want people to get the wrong impression here. But very, very capital G good taste and in music, so I was very, very careful. What a dumb thing to think about, but
there was a period of my life, like 3 months, my freshman year of college, where I was very into what we'll call contemporary Christian rock.
Yeah,
like Building 429 is the one that comes to mind, like those type of groups.
Yeah.
Shout out to all my Hypel heads out there because apparently that's one of his favorite bands.
Do you listen to Good Christian Fun?
No, what is that?
You would love Good Christian Fun. He's one of the co-hosts of Gilmore Guys, which was a legendary podcast.
Yeah.
Back in the day, he grew up in the church and all that, and he goes through stuff like that of the Christian bands that he listened to, and they just go through all these different investigations and the subculture. But it's a fantastic podcast. You would love Good Christian Fun.
I'll listen to it after this.
Yeah. And report back. Let me know. It's good.
But Spotify, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have this feature that was basically incognito mode for Spotify. And I would flip it on if I put on Building 429 or stuff like that because I don't want my Animal Collective Scrabbles or whatever to be taken down by the David Crowder band.
Yeah. Sean McDonald. You don't want to get him on there. Who else is in there? Too much Hillsong. You're like,
Bethel or whatever.
There's so many. What was the one? The fish. What was? I can't do this anymore. Let's remember some Christian alternative rock bands.
Yeah, Skillet.
Oh my god. But the last thing I'll say on the book thing though, and this is to bring it all the way back to North Carolina basketball because they go hand in hand. Will Warren, and this is what. I think North Carolina basketball fans are kind of in a bad place this year, so this is a positive spin to kind of get away, to step back and not take college basketball too seriously because it's been hard to go to the national title and now be staring at the NIT the following year. And I think with the book reading and stuff, I was it was my last semester UT, and one of my papers I was writing about the fall of why people don't read anymore. And it was something like 50% of college graduates never read a book after graduating college ever again, 50%. And then it's
that's right.
So, yeah, but then you go through the amount of different statistics of who doesn't ever read. And I still will come to this conclude, or I will still advocate for this take, Will. And this is my snobbiest take. It's such a snobby take, and I hate it snobby. But
I'm so excited for this.
I feel this in my bones. a pet peeve of mine is someone who says like, I read 13 books this year, and then you find out that all 13 were audiobooks. So when they're riding around, I'm like, no, you listened to 13 podcasts this year. You listened to
I wasn't
13,
where I thought you were going to go with that.
I don't like it. It's not reading. I don't qualify that. And the studies show that it's not the same. Like sitting down and looking at it is completely different, and you retain so much more when you read by actually staring at the pages and going at that speed. It works your brain in a different way. It works your brain harder. It's not the same. So when people say I'm reading this book, and I'm like, are you reading this book, or are you listening to a book on tape while you're commuting? And I understand we all have a limited amount of time. Just don't call it reading a book. You're listening to a book, which is a very, very different thing.
So if you were to think about this in a basketball sense, North Carolina and Oregon State, they were listening to the books. They were not doing the work. All the while, Houston's been reading.
Do you share this take? Is this snobby? Is this fair?
I've never actually thought about it, but I mean, like, yeah, I don't retain it nearly as well as when I'm doing an audible versus like the book is in front of me, because there's so many more distractions.
Yes, and it just works your brain differently. Like you're not reading a book. You read 0 books if you listen to 13. You read 0 is what that take is. Oh God, it's so snobby, but I would just. I can't control it, Will. It's a terrible take. I understand. Sorry, folks. I know you're all busy, but you're not reading books. You're listening.
Yeah, how about you grow up and listen to a podcast? Let's you flip that little lawnmower on, and instead of firing up, I don't know, the Da Vinci Code. That seems like a popular baby's first audiobook. Like a book that you know is bad, so you're just like, well, I didn't pay anything for it because I got it for free on Audible. When you flip that little lawnmower on, you need to be reading that book.
Also, that's a great analogy, because like, what are they not doing to children? We're like, read to your kids. Like that actually is a big thing, is when you read to your kids, they retain, like it's important for their brain development. They're not like, put some headphones on the kid and let him listen.
Yeah, while that kid's benching 135, put those AirPods in and turn that kid loose.
There's one more take. It's gonna be off air. It's another off air take. But this one I gotta save for off air. But remind me.
Whenever we hit the off season, I would like to do a show where it's each other's 5 like most indefensible opinions you have.
Okay.
Like the ones you know are unpopular, and you're just like, well, screw it. It's my opinion, and I believe it. Damn it.
Oh, I'm so game for that. I'm so game. Which naturally leads us to who the best team in the Big 12 is right now.
Well, folks, it's you.
Is it?
Yeah, it's you. You're the best team. So my honest to God best guess is it's Texas, which is not at all what I saw coming once the whole Beard thing went down. And really not at all what I saw coming after the Tennessee game, because that game highlighted all of their deficiencies, which is that they're not playing defense nearly as well as they were. And they really still haven't fixed that. Like I thought they played good defense against Kansas State. I thought they were fine against Baylor. And I thought they were actively bad against Kansas on defense. But at the same time, Kansas wasn't very good either. So it kind of washed out. But their offense is so good, it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, they keep racking up these wins. I know they lost to Kansas, but it's still 8-3 in the Big 12 in a year where, I mean, like really 12 wins might win you the conference, which is absurd to say that going 67% could make you the sole winner. And like, I don't know if that's going to happen, but we're staring down a scenario where it's like 7 games left. Texas is going to be favored in 5. And so if they go 13-5, I don't think there's a chance anybody shares it with them. And really, I mean, like 13-5 on paper is like, all right, you won, but at what cost? So, but that doesn't show you the full picture of like, that's a really impressive record. I mean, that's just the meat grinder of this conference. And there's a very realistic scenario where, let's say Texas gets through 12-6, 13-5, whatever. There are like 6 teams right behind them that could all finish with the exact same record. Like Baylor, Kansas, Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Oklahoma State, all could finish like 11-7 or 10-8. All could tie for second. You realistically could go 11-7 and be the 2 seed. Which is nuts to say, but that's what we're dealing with here. Like a historically insane conference to try and win games in.
Has he done enough? Do you think are you sold that he deserves the job full time?
I think I would personally give it to him. I don't think they're going to. It seems, because the buzz out there is like, he's going to have to win the big, it's like a yes and. He has to win the Big 12 and he has to go to the Elite Eight or further. Which is, I mean, like in a tournament where it's like, it is like a weighted roulette wheel of like, yeah, you can be really good, but on the wrong night, you could be bounced.
There's also a real chance that we get Marquette and Texas in like an Elite Eight situation, Sweet 16. That would be fun.
Or you honestly could get Tennessee and Texas again. Or it could be a deal where I really don't think any of these Big 12 teams are going to be a 1 seed just because they're cannibalizing each other.
Yeah.
But in the event that one does, like, I don't think this could happen, but you could have a Final Four of like Texas, Kansas, or Texas, Baylor, or Texas, Iowa State.
Do you think this is like something that, because it seems more and more like Gonzaga is going to end up in the Big 12 in basketball. I think it's just, It seems like we're inching closer, because it's a money thing, right? Like, it's just, they're inching closer and closer to join the Big 12 in basketball setting. But I wonder if that's like one, even with the money, it's like the Maryland taking the Big 10 money in football. Where like, yeah, you took that money, but now you're like, the 1 seed days are probably over. Like, you gobbling up wins and finishing 35-2 every regular season are gone, because you're now moving into the best basketball conference. And look, you'll still recruit really well. You'll still be a well-coached team. But like, are you sure? Are you sure the money's worth it? Because Maryland punted on ever winning the Big 10 or winning a conference ever again when they made the jump from the ACC to the Big 10. And yeah, the money's great, but like, what are you playing for? You're playing for 4th in the Big 10 East every single year.
Yeah, and with the Big 12 specifically, the argument, and I guess you got to go kind of like, last decade or so to present to really make it fit. The argument would be that you're more battle-tested, but the evidence is really more that you're just more exhausted. So I went to Torvik just now because he's got the tourney stats, and he's got one of my favorite stats, performance against seed expectation, which is just like how many games did you win versus what your seed normally wins. The Big 12 is the second worst conference over the last decade at performing a seed expectation. They've won 11 fewer games than they should have. Only the Mountain West is worse. And so I agree with you. Like, it's fun to watch. There is not a bad Big 12 game possible. Maybe some of the Texas Tech on the road ones aren't very good, but even so, it's like Texas Tech probably would make the NCAA tournament if they played in the SEC. So it's a great thing to watch, and at the same time, it is probably killing all of these teams before they even make the big dance. Because so if you look at the again Torvik ratings here, this is the ranking of 1 through 8 in the conference standings. 14th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 19th, 20th, 23rd, 17th. So there's no like obvious top end teams, but there are 8 top 25 teams. That is brutal to try and work your way through. And so, yeah,
and that's
I don't know.
Every year, and it's only going to get tougher with Houston joining the fold next year.
Yeah, so you add Houston and possibly Gonzaga, and it's going to be nuts. With Texas and Kansas leaving.
And it's like, are you sure you want this?
Not Texas and Kansas, Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah. Like, Gonzaga, are you sure? Is the money worth it? Are you struggling in that small university like setting? Like, it's pretty good. WCC's pretty good. Are you sure you want to make that jump? Are you sure the money's worth it?
And the funny thing is, like, we remember how it felt when like the Big East kind of cratered and you lost like a big chunk of what made like not perfectly made the Big East special, but you saw like West Virginia go, Pitt, Notre Dame, Louisville, UConn, Cincy, and they kind of got better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. It's fewer teams, but like pound for pound, it's a pretty nasty conference to work your way through. And you wonder if the same thing's going to happen to the Big 12, where like the big name boys leave, but somehow it's just like, okay, we're even more concentrated now. The money is more evenly split, and we're just going to kill each other for 2 months until we get to March.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We'll see what happens.
How's that for a rosy take if you're Gonzaga?
I mean, but it's real. Like Gonzaga,
it's real.
That's what you're staring at if you make this jump. Last big thing before we wrap up here with stats that caught your eye this week, Will. Defector, which is a very good website that you should go subscribe to if you are not already. Fantastic writing, like specifically Drew McGarry, friend of the pod, David Roth, but Ray Ratto is still, and I will maintain, my favorite sports writer, and has been for over a decade now, because he is funny as hell always. Like, he's just, I would kill to write like 1/10 as well as Ray Ratto can in like 1,000 words or less. Like, he's just fantastic. But Ray Ratto did not write this particular piece well. It was, let me check my notes here, Kim Pomeroy who wrote for Defector. And it's about the flap technical rule that Fran Fraschilla was tweeting about today. Jay Billis doesn't like it, another friend of the program. But it seems like no one's happy about the flap technical. What do you make of the piece, and what do you make of how the rule has been enforced in college basketball to this point?
Fascinating piece in the whole. So Ken goes through, his argument is that it's actually limited some of the worst parts of flopping, because kids are a little more scared to just openly do it now. And it has, like, offensive fouls are down. Some of the, like, Class B technicals they're dwindling as the season goes on. They were really high those first 2 weeks, but they've kind of dwindled the later we've gotten. And I mean, personally, I have seen more flops, like, not go rewarded with like a technical, but just go uncalled in general. Like, it's just, they fall down and like, okay, play on. Who cares? You didn't earn that charge call. And it wasn't a block. So I don't know. I'm stammering, but what I'm saying here is, like, the big test is going to be March. The big test is, do we get to an NCAA tournament game where a referee, and it's going to be Pat friggin' Adams, has to make a hard decision. And that hard decision is on what's, to everybody's eyes, basically a pretty obvious flop. But normally would just be a play on or a block. Do they give that technical?
I think they do.
And when that happens, will that decide the outcome of the game? That is going to be what everybody's waiting to see. It is funny that it's kind of slipped under the national radar until now, because it was a huge story that first week, and it kind of hasn't been since. But I think, I really do hope we don't see one. But in the event we see one, that's going to be the tell for how long this lasts and how happy it makes people.
Well, I think the Tennessee-Auburn game was kind of instructive in this, where I told folks after, where the Auburn fans who were upset about the non-call that ended that game, what I told folks, and I don't know if you shared this sentiment, is just that, like, hey, once Auburn got the flop technical foul by those officials earlier in the game, they should have operated under the assumption that they were not going to get any benefit of the doubt 3-point foul calls. Like, you should go ahead and check out. Like, that's going to go your way after multiple, because, like, they're not calling that immediately. Like, so if they see it once, they're probably not going to call it. Like you said, it's
a repeated offender thing,
right? And then you're like, well, now we need it to be called to tie this game and send it to overtime. It's like, well, that's just a bad strategy, because I don't think they were going to call that based on an earlier flop technical foul call, because you're already on their radar as a flopping jump shooting team. So I just think that's what we'll see. I think officials, if I had to guess, is they try and call that early to push them away from trying that late in games, so they don't have to be put in a situation where they have to call it at the buzzer and decide potentially a tournament game. So it's like, you call it early, like, hey, don't try this, because we're not calling this late. Yes.
So, and with what you said, I think I share a sentiment in that, like, people are going to want you to say, like, yeah, call it early, but also call the right thing late in the game. And I normally, I agree. But referees are human. They're going to screw up, because, I mean, that's referees. That's everybody. We all screw up. So I don't think I'm shocked when I see, like you said, Wendell Green wraps it. I think he wrapped his legs or tried to something or other against a Tennessee player in, like, the late first half. Got called for the flop warning after he had already done it once or twice. And so they tried to let it go a time or two, and then when he kept doing it, they're like, okay, that's enough. We're cutting it out. And, he generally didn't do it the rest of the way.
Right.
Until that final play. And so I think that, like, I stand with you of, like, would you, as a basketball fan, like to see the exact right call made every single time? Sure. But we're never going to get there. This isn't like baseball where we are going to have robot umps one day. We're not going to have robot refs.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I don't know that I want the robot refs making a flop tech call in the final seconds.
It's going to be fun, though, when we see the first manager just, like, beat a computer into the ground for a bad ball and strike call. Like, just smashing the computer.
It's going to be
Office
awesome.
Space style.
Is Don Mattingly still a manager?
No, he is no longer the Marlins manager.
That would have been my pick.
Yeah.
Because in my head, he is a guy who would, like, ask to see the computer's manager, and he just beats up the system admin.
Have you ever asked that in a restaurant? Have you ever asked to speak to the manager?
No.
No.
No chance.
No. I'm not a confrontation guy either. Like I
no,
just
eat your kibble and move on.
100%. 100%. Eat your kibble. I like that.
It's on the brain because Cedric's just dispensed in his little bowl.
There you go. Shout out to Cedric. No Cedric on the pod today. Where is Ced?
Let's see if we can. There he is.
He is.
Window.
Look at Cedric. He's got some searching to do. He's out there searching. Does he make biscuits?
Aren't we all?
Well,
yes, many.
Okay, I learned what that was on Sunday. We went to the Knoxville Cat Cafe on Sunday afternoon.
Yes. Okay.
And it was a delight. It was a nice time. But go support. And if you're a local Knoxville resident, go adopt a cat today.
What is it called again? I know what the one in Charleston is called, but I don't know.
Scruffy's Cat Cafe? I think. I'm pretty sure it's Scruffy's Cat Cafe. But this black cat kept getting up next to me and just pressing down on this little pillow over and over again. And they were like, oh, he's making biscuits. And I'm like, come again? And it's like, and he's making biscuits. And I was like, I did not know that was a thing. But then I was researching it. Like, it soothes them when they do it, apparently.
Yes. So that's a great thing. And then the other thing I've learned as a cat owner is they want you to scratch their head a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so quick digression before we get back on topic.
Mm-hmm.
Cedric's thing to do is he'll do the biscuit thing in bed, and then he looks at me and he just goes like that. He squawks at me, and that's his way of being like, scratch my head, you idiot.
Huh.
And so he's learned how to demand it, and like a sucker, I do it every time, which encourages him to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's over now. Like, you have to do it. He's expecting it. Which naturally leads us to the final topic here today, Will. Stats or stat, singular, that has caught your eye over the last week in college basketball is what, my friend?
I'm going to go, so these are Torvik's numbers since Christmas Day. And it's a three-parter, because I was like, let's go big this week. So I'm going to ask you three questions. We'll see how close you get to the answer. So who has been the best team in the Big East since Christmas?
It's not UConn.
It is
Xavier?
definitely not UConn. It is Creighton.
Oh.
Creighton is number 4 nationally since Christmas Day. They have been on fire.
Huh.
What's interesting is they're now well outperforming the preseason metrics consensus.
But I seem to recall us being pretty high on Creighton before the year.
Yeah, but they're now like in line with where they were in the AP poll before the year. So it's all caught up.
Good for them. Play a fun style. You love Baylor Schneiderman. Like you're all in on Creighton.
From 6-6 to 16-8. I mean, pretty dadgum good team. All right, second question. What is the conference with the most top 10 teams in terms of like quality of play since Christmas Day?
I'm going to go Pac-12.
It's not the Pac-12. That would be awesome, though.
Yeah. Is it a non-Power 5?
Yeah, it's a big conference.
It is a big conference. It's definitely not the SEC.
It is the SEC.
Is it really?
3 SEC teams in the top 10 since Christmas Day. Alabama number 1, obviously. Tennessee number 3. Texas A&M number 9.
Wow.
The Aggies have been playing really, really well for about 2 months now. They have come out of that early season tailspin that we talked about. They're playing their way into the tournament, and they're playing their way in at such a rate that they are going to be a crazy dangerous 10 seed by the time they get in. I mean, they really could be a 10 seed that's like top 25 in Ken Pom.
I thought with UCLA and Arizona, I was like, that was just something I was like, I feel like that's enough.
UCLA was top 10, and the Big 12 had, I think the Big 12 and the Big 10 both had 2. And the Big 12s were, I want to say Texas and Iowa State. So.
All right, where are we going last?
Number of undefeated teams since December 25th.
Conference.
It's two conferences. Neither are power. It is. We'll say they are. One is a one bid league and one is not. I think I am confident you will get one of these.
So one is a one big league, and one is not.
One is, they're both mid-majors, but one is one of the better, I would say one of the three best mid-major conferences.
WCC?
Correct.
Okay. And then what's this? And then it's another one. It's a super small one.
Yeah. And can you name the team in the WCC that's undefeated since Christmas?
St. Mary's?
It is St. Mary's. They are 10-0. And so the other one is Big Sky Team Eastern Washington.
I never would have gotten that.
12-0 since Christmas Day. Not a lot on the books about these guys, but they own the nation's longest win streak at 14. They are electric shooters, and I mean, they got a real shot at going undefeated in the Big Sky, which, you know, like to the layperson probably means nothing, but to a team that's on target to be a 15 seed, pretty dangerous if you come in with like a 20-game win streak.
Do they play on a red court like their football team?
No, but they have that same awesome EWU Eagle logo.
It's a good look. I remember they were an innovative offense in football a couple years ago. I think Bo Baldwin installed a really fun one. That kind of speaks to our thing where we're like, yeah, we have our Tennessee and Michigan love, or you have your Michigan love, I have my Tennessee love, but then you have to identify with some other smaller programs to keep the juices flowing because it gets boring if that's all you have.
It keeps me much more sane caring about like random teams versus exclusively investing in. I mean,
that's why I watch Hawaii, and I love the armed forces. So like I'll watch Air Force. I love watching Air Force. I love Navy and Army, and then I'm still adamant. Like I was very upset that the Naval Academy did not pivot to the air raid with this coaching change. Where I'm like, I want one of them to at least run the air raid, and then the other two can run the triple. All three should not be running the triple. That should be a rule. At least one does the air raid.
Couple more things here in Eastern Washington that I think should be known. Three of the best names I've seen all season. I'm going to say them out loud.
Okay.
Angelo Allegri.
Yes.
Great alliterative name. Steel Venters.
Okay.
Steel with an E at the end, like Chambers.
Definitely not a real person, but continue.
And number one favorite, might be the best name I've heard all season, Cedric Coward.
You're biased.
And you want to know the amazing thing? Mr. Cedric Coward, whoever he is, number one in America in 2-point percentage. He is hitting 80% of his twos.
So he's a big.
He's 6'6". He's a 6'6" small forward that is just absurdly good at hitting twos.
He's just like I just have.
I bet he can leap out of a gym.
I just imagine him being like the Ben Simmons of the mid majors, where he's like, unless it's a perfect shot right under the rim, I'm not taking it. I'm not taking any shots anywhere else.
Thrilled to share that Mr. Cedric Coward's Instagram bio says certified bucket.
I love that for him.
Yes, go Eagles.
There you go. Will,
I guess we have to say go Birds this week. Sorry,
I'm not doing that. I don't like the Eagles.
See, I don't know. I'm on team
Falcon.
Need a good game.
I would like a good game as well.
If that thing that people were going nuts over earlier in the week about the quote leaked Super Bowl score, would love for that to come to fruition because 37-34 would be awesome.
The script stuff got old very quickly.
Yeah, a lot of bad tweets.
It got bad very, very quickly.
The one about J.R. Smith reading his NBA Finals script was pretty good, though.
Oof. Stats by Will. .substack.com. Go subscribe over there today if you are not already. Great college basketball content, so make sure you're locked in there. Follow him on Twitter at Stats by Will. All that good stuff. Anything else you want to plug as we wrap up here on a Thursday evening, my friend?
Minor announcement of sorts. If you are a Field of 68 newsletter subscriber, I will have a piece coming out in there on, I think, Saturday is what I've been told. And then Monday, if you go to my site, there will be a look into all 32 conferences and what member of the conference projects to have the biggest impact in March. Like which team lines up the most with previous good teams.
Goodman Hoops, Stats by Will, a partnership that we always thought was inevitable. I've always said you're the Robbie Hummel of college basketball writing. Well, I've always said that.
Robbie's voice is so much better than mine.
Well, it's different. I've never seen anything he's written. The written voice is different than the auditory.
That's
the
fair.
auditory voice. Well, thank you as always, my friend. Make sure, folks, that you are reading books, not listening to them, because they are not the same thing as we have outlined here on this college basketball podcast. Those are the important things. Go check out where John Grisham is on the sidelines this season. I feel like he's got to have popped up at a couple of these UVA games. They're great, and all that good stuff. Will, thank you as always, my friend, and I will talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me on.